What's up, everybody? We are back. So what's the topic today?
Coaching, masterminds.
Coaching and masterminds.
Yeah, you've been a huge, that's been a big part of your world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both from the mastermind side of things and also coaching. And you're also such a mentor to others, but I think that for you in the last, since I've known you, it's been a huge cornerstone for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, I love the topic of masterminds and coaching because I've experienced a lot of it and a lot of different things.
We love this subject, but we don't like the name.
Yeah, we don't like the name. I like, what did you call it? Brain trust?
Brain trust.
I think mastermind's overused. Everybody creates a group and it's a mastermind, and I think it just depends on what you want it to be. So I thought we'd just talk about all the different terms that are out there and maybe where to start. You know, because I think that where you start depends on where you're at in life. And I think a great topic, you know, we left off last time with talking about investing in real estate. This is really an investment in yourself and what will it pay off, you know, in your future. And that's really the important part, is that what you're putting into it, what you're investing, is also what are you getting out of it. But I think what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it.
Everything is just like that, right? I mean, I love this whole idea of like the investment piece. So we talked about how you invest in real estate, and then this is really truly the most important piece, is investing in yourself. And, you know, it's true though. I mean, you could show up for anything and be paying for it. And if you don't do the work, you're not going to get anything out of it, right? Like, think about the paid trainer, right? So, but it is true. I think that you have to be in a mindset of sorts to want to have change or evolution, or whatever like people call that, to want to invest in themselves. And I think that some people probably struggle with believing that they have the worthiness, or that they're enough, or that it makes sense for them. Like, how many times do we talk ourselves out of things that we truly need because we don't want to put ourselves first, right?
Right.
So how did you overcome that in terms of realizing that coaching was important for you? Like, when did you first take that step into the coaching world?
Trying to think of, so in real estate, you know, the coaching always comes from some great 2 or 3 day seminar that you went to, and then they sell you coaching at the end of it.
Right.
They put on a great conference, a lot of great information, and then they sell you the coaching. And I think that, you know, when I first started, it was with Tom Ferry. That was kind of my first coaching experience.
Which I think is still amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing, depending again on the space that you're at. But I think coaching, there's so much available now when you look at the influencer world and Instagram and Facebook. You know, there's so many different things that you can buy into. But I think it depends on what you need.
Right.
You know,
so that's a really good point, because there's a lot of distractions on the coaching front lines because of what you just said, Instagram, social media, all of that. How does someone know what they need? A lot of times people are approaching getting coached with just knowing that they need something. They need to get better, or they want to have better results, or they want to improve, you know, themselves. Like, how?
Well, I think that's a great point. Is it a self-improvement? So you said trainer. Mm-hmm. So when you go through, what kind of training are you looking for? And is that trainer, the research you're doing on them, are you getting somebody specialized in it? Or are you just looking to start something and experience whether or not you're going to use it? You can go to LA Fitness or one of these smaller gyms and get a trainer.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to be the same thing as if you went to more of a private club or a private trainer. It's going to be more expensive, and you're going to get a different taste or a different feel for what they provide and different results.
So when you started, you know, seeking coaching, was it for results driven, like in terms of for your business, or?
Yeah, it was results and probably accountability.
Okay.
I felt like I needed some accountability, and it was kind of a drive. The way that coaching program was driven was, you know, there was things that we had to do, things that we had to report back on, even though the hard part with it is you could definitely fudge what you were truly doing.
Oh, because you could just, if you didn't do anything, you could show up and say that you
let's be honest. You get on a group call and you're going through your numbers. And if everybody's like, yeah, I'm doing this, and then you're like, oh, I didn't do anything. You're not going to be that person. You're going to fudge, because you're in a room of all these other people. So how true are you being to yourself when you're paying for that? And remember, you're paying for that investment.
Yeah.
So are you doing the work? And I think a lot of people sign up for something and then they don't do the work, and they're like, oh, well, it didn't work.
So interesting. So I almost feel like when people decide they want to do coaching, maybe instead of knowing what they need to know if they're ready to do the work.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what it is. Nobody, I mean, you can't just have somebody that tells you, you're amazing, go you.
Yeah. I mean, that's not what you want. So I think I think you have to split it up into what you're looking for in life, because I think some people are different aspects of, is there some coaching or some mentoring? And I think there's a difference between the two. In your personal life, maybe in your physical life, and then also in your business life. And your business life is a couple of different things. Is it a mentor or a coach that is helping you change the back end of your business, not the sales part, but how the business operation is running and what you need to be accountable for, or what changes you need to make. So I'm trying to think of all the different things so that I'm not all over the board on it. So I started off with Tom Ferry. That was great from an accountability, but it was very transactional driven. Like, are you hitting your numbers? Activity driven. Are you hitting your goals? Well, if you didn't hit your goals, do you need to make more calls? Do you need to set more appointments? What are the distractions?
Right.
And I think that's a great spot to start for somebody, because the coach is really there to help you make left or right turns or bring you back on track and ask you hard questions to keep you going.
Totally. And they hold up a mirror.
Right.
They hold up a mirror, and they always bring back to Pandora's box.
Right. And I think sometimes when you're in the coaching space, it's all about that part of the business.
Yeah.
So you're just being coached on that piece. Now, when you change it a little bit and you shift up to maybe needing a mentor, the mentor probably is going through what is your personal life looking like? What is your business life? They're not so much engaged
in well-rounded.
It's very well-rounded.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about that earlier, right? So coaching, if you go to see a coach for business, it's inevitable you're going to end up, it's going to be about your personal too. If you go to see somebody for your personal, it's going to end up encompassing all the things in your business too. I mean, I've always loved this really simple equation: activity plus behavior equals productivity, which applies to just about everything, because like the mentor, the coach, I mean, all of these things examine, like Tom Ferry to me is very activity driven, right?
Right.
It's about helping you fine tune what that daily activity hustle piece looks like, and for you to very clearly define it. And then like a mentor, I think, is more about the behavior piece. So like, how do you hold yourself accountable, things like that. And then that equals results of whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Sure.
So I love that mentor piece, because I think the mentor part that you're talking about, it leads you down the road of like getting to emulate or see how others operate and taking away the things that, are important to you, and then fine tuning the backside, like you said, the run of the house.
Well, I think that's where people end up with multiple coaches, because you have multiple phases of your life. I have a trainer that, helps me structure my eating, helps me structure my workouts, and he's there holding me accountable for that one aspect of my life. So you pay for that. That's an investment to get here. And then you go to, because I think like you do Orange Theory and some other stuff, and that's kind of like paying for that coaching in your life or that accountability, because you're set standards for what you're doing there, and that's why you pay more for that than just having the $20 a month gym membership.
Right.
Because there's no accountability if you just have the gym membership. And then you segment, and then maybe you've got, your coach, which is on your, maybe it's your business accountability. How many calls are you making? How do you get here? And they're keeping you on track.
Right.
And the coach is really to help you accomplish the goals that you want to accomplish.
Right. They're there to remind you of the things you said were important to you.
But I think the importance of a coach, though, is that you understand is they are not there to coddle your ass.
No. No.
Seriously, some people hire coaches and they just kind of give them the patsy stuff rather than really like dig, like, why aren't you doing this stuff? And if you don't, I'm not coaching you anymore.
That's what I was, oh my gosh, you just read my mind, because I was thinking about, I know some coaches that when their clients show up and they haven't kind of done quote unquote the homework, they're like, well, our session's over.
Yeah.
Peace out.
But that's important, because even though you're paying for something, if you're not going to do it, then you're not going to waste my time. I understand you paid for it, but you don't get to waste my time if you're not going to do it.
What's the most, like, just like quick recall, like what is the most important little coaching moment you've had? Not a mastermind moment, but a coaching moment where you were the student that's really made a big effect on you.
I think the most important part was realizing I need more than just one coach. You know, I needed more. I needed separated, but I think that God, I want to answer the question, but I don't know what that one defining moment is.
Well, and maybe there's multiple, because I think that you just kind of shared something important, is that as you're progressing through your life, there are going to be times in which you need different kind of coaches, and they may overlap, they may be simultaneous, they may be at completely different intervals in your life, right? So, or in your business, whatever that looks like. And I think that's cool. I mean, clearly you've been super successful, and coaching has been a huge part of it, and it's just been an evolution for you, right? So, but, well, okay, so how about a coach or somebody that mentored you that you feel like was exceptional, an exceptional influence?
I think, I think probably the most.
I love that I'm stumping you.
Yeah, you are, because I've had so many different coaches, but they were all in different parts of my life.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, Kimberly Ryan, she was probably the best coach combination mentor for the couple of years, because she was in a part of my life when my dad died, and I was really like struggling with the business and the shift, my dad dying and all the different things. And she really helped me see a lot of different things and keep me on track, not just in business, but in my personal life. Cause I had a lot of like emotional experiences at that time where one of the things she brought up to me was, when my dad died, I kind of took on the father role to make sure everything was okay. So I never got the chance to grieve over my dad's passing, because I had to step in and make sure things were still moving. And so Kim was probably instrumental in my life at that time, you know, and she did one of the most amazing things as a coach that I've ever had done, which I love doing with people, is it's called a red shirt exercise, where you walk through on a piece of paper, tell me all the things you're doing right now. And it's like setting appointments and making calls and this. Okay, if you could hire that out, what would you want to be doing? And then it was kind of going through levels, and then it kind of gets down to like, what's the legacy that you want to leave? Like, what's the one word that describes you? Which is so insane, because we did this 5 years ago. And that word wealth builder, I still have the big Post-it note, and the word wealth builder is at the bottom of it.
That's awesome.
And that was the word, and that's the one thing.
That's it. Yeah. That is the moment. That's the coolest story. I've never heard that story before.
So awesome. that one word described where I wanted to be.
And that's what you do.
that is what I do. So in the real estate space, I mean, that's what I do. Whether you're buying a first house, or you're selling your house, or you're buying investment properties, I'm helping build wealth for, you know, now and for generations to come. But that word came long before.
Interesting, right?
Long before. Mm-hmm.
No, that's awesome though. I love that story with Kim. I love it too, because I know Kim, and so I can kind of visualize all of this, you know, and that was like 5 or 6 years ago. So for me sitting here across from you, that's like a huge moment for you in terms of coaching and mentoring, that you kind of don't even sometimes realize there are those moments.
Right.
But it was your circumstances met need at the same time, you know?
But the coach that I had also knew my heart, knew my family.
Yeah.
and it made it easier for them to get me into a better space. And so here's probably the misconception out there. Coach and accountability and the paid for doesn't always have to be that.
Right.
Sometimes I remember at CCV listening to Ashley, the head pastor, talk about his mentorship with John Maxwell. And John Maxwell obviously is so well known, and he's just an amazing, wealth of leadership.
Yeah.
But Ashley talked about the mentorship was not it was for him. So when they meet once a quarter, this is probably one of the most important things to take away. If you're looking for a mentor or somebody like that, you can reach out and ask somebody to mentor you, but you have to be very cognizant of their time. So Ashley talks about, I get one meeting a quarter with him, and before that meeting, I will send him the 5 things that I want to discuss so that we stay on track and I get questions and answers and those types of things so that I'm not taking advantage of his time.
Well, preparedness.
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's pretty big. I mean, that's basically somebody who's also trying to leverage and very respectful of somebody else's time, but also has an agenda of sorts too. Like, hey, these are the things that very clear on what they want, what their needs are, right? What they need for their coaching.
And I think that's the real thing is, if you're asking somebody to mentor you, don't waste their time.
Right.
That is a disrespectful, don't show up late, don't not show up at all. Like, you have to be respectful of that person's time, especially if it's not paid. I mean, either way, you should still be respectful of that person's time, because if you're not, you're
even more.
You're damaging their schedule and those types of things, and they're wanting to, their life purpose is to help people. So, I think that you have to determine where you're at in life and what you need. And I think that that's sometimes the hardest part. Thinking time, right. The road less stupid.
Our buddy Keith Cunningham, thinking time.
Yeah.
That's huge though. So what do you think about how does somebody go about finding a coach or a mentor?
I think it's reaching out to people and asking questions. It's, it all depends on what you need.
Yeah.
So if you're in
But what a great conversation. Like, if I was here, we've been friends for a little bit. If I was to say to you, hey, look, I'm looking for a coach, and the first thing you would say to me was, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish, right?
What do you want to be coached on?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a zillion people that I know. It's, for instance, if Eden says, I'm looking for a coach, well, what are you working on? And what is it? Well, I want to get better at the Instagram algorithms. Well, then I would refer her to my friend Jess Glazier, which is an Instagram guru. Like, that would be a really good coach. She has a really great course, those types of things. So go see her. That's what that looks like. So I think there's specialty stuff. And then same thing in sales. God, you can find anything.
Yeah.
But I think some people need to figure out what they're really looking for before they go hire it. Real estate, there's a zillion coaches.
Yeah.
And I think that, do you want to be in a group setting? Do you want it one-on-one? I think group settings are a great starting point because they're obviously a little bit more inexpensive. You're going to hear some of the other questions. You can be a little bit more timid about what you're asking and what you're getting, but you're getting some information from other people. Yeah. And it might, the group coaching sometimes is a little bit more accountability because you're being pressured by the group.
Well, and also, ideally, I mean, I would say just a little caution is that sometimes the group might not be the right group for you. It doesn't mean that group coaching doesn't work, right? It just means that, like, hey, it's time to check another avenue or a different resource.
I think more importantly,
find your vibe.
I think more importantly, if you're going to make an investment, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, I think you need to do your research. You talk about real estate, people that don't do their research and don't check into somebody that they use, that's kind of on them when something goes wrong. So if you pay a coach and you don't get anything out of it, well, that's kind of on you because you didn't do the research on that person to figure out if they're the right fit. Right. But I also think the coaching industry, on the flip side, they need to be more aware of, this is not my ideal client.
Agreed. I mean, most really great coaches that I know now, they will always do a consultation, like 15 minutes, whatever, with somebody to see if it's a good fit. I mean, it should be that way, right? So here's a fun one for you. What's your definition of being coachable? If you were to go, being coachable is?
I think it's your ability to take advice and take somebody's experiences and figure out if being willing to shift. If somebody gives you an experience, because a lot of people are like, they're so set in their ways. My dad would never have been a good candidate to be coachable. He just wasn't going to change. He was set in his ways.
Well, even when you think about employees or associates or people that you work with that you were responsible for leading or mentoring, like, right, they were part of your world. You know, I've always come across the term in my career about people that are coachable or not coachable. And so it's interesting to, hear like your perspective on that. Like,
I think if you're coachable, you're flexible.
Yeah.
There's things that you have to be willing to try that are outside the box that you haven't thought about. That you're like, oh, okay, I'll try that. So one thing I love listening to audiobooks and things like that is like you get these little nuggets and you're like, I want to try that.
Yeah.
But don't be scared to try those things, but be committed to giving them a shot. Don't, in every business. So when you go back to episode 3, when we were talking about, 90-day goals and setting those things. Right, the horse shit of New Year's resolutions. People want to try something, but they won't give it that try for like 90 full days. Like if I told you, hey, Bernie, in order to increase your business, you need to make 5 calls a day and have these conversations. You can't do it for a week and expect the change. It's very similar to, again, New Year's resolutions. You're like, great, I hiked for 6 days and I ate good and the scale won't move. It says I'm the same weight. This is I'm going on to something else. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what people do. But if I do the same thing for 90 days and then I come back to the scale, well, I was consistent in doing what I'm doing, and the coach told me to do this and to put it into practice for 90 days, that's where the results come.
Totally. It's super easy to be motivated and inspired. It's way harder to be disciplined and committed.
Yeah. We all get that super inspirational in the morning. You're like, yeah, I'm going to do this today.
It's January 8th. I'm super excited.
Right. But I think it's important that when somebody coaches you that you're willing to be flexible and you're willing to jump in and go and be committed to that action for 90 days.
Well, here's what's interesting too. I think being coachable is open to failure, right? You got to be open to trying things that you're ridiculously uncomfortable with, that you may not do well, because to your point, to create the habit or to create the results or success or change, it takes more than a couple days. It takes more than one try. It's going to be multiple tries. So you're a big fan of coaching. How did you go from, and you've been in a lot of really great masterminds that have been paid and unpaid, just in terms of like collaboration of great people, and then things that you have sought out on your own. Talk a little bit about the mastermind piece and how we love that word.
Yeah. Everybody these days has some sort of mastermind going on. I was really introduced to it, funny story. I had locked myself in my office on a Labor Day weekend. That's in September.
Yes, it is.
Every now and again, you get those two confused, Labor Day, Memorial Day. And I had picked up a book. This was 4 years ago. Lewis Howes, which absolutely loved the guy, and it was The School of Greatness. Loved his story. I'm like, At the time, I really didn't know what like the influencer space was. And so I got done with the book and I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to go to Columbus, Ohio for this thing. She's like, what the fuck is in Columbus, Ohio? There's nothing there. I've been there. And I said, well, this guy, Lewis Howes, this is where he's from. He wrote this book. It was really awesome. And he brings these people together that are on all kinds of different businesses, from the fitness to mental well-being and to, anything. And so I went not knowing anybody. And talking about getting out of my comfort zone, I'm like, I'm going to go by myself. I'm not going to know anybody. And my goal is to try to meet somebody at lunch, at dinner, at happy hour. And every time I sat at the bar, back when I used to drink, like that was perfect for me. I could sit at the bar, I could have a drink and meet somebody. And I met all these amazing people that were from, like one guy I met at lunch, him and his wife. He's called the 162 guy on Instagram. He has a 162 game New York Yankees streak. He went to every game, 162 games. And he, like, there was a GoFundMe page, like, for people to buy him a beer, because he was like that was his goal. I was like, and he wrote a book about it.
That's awesome.
No matter where they were, he flew to every game. Like, it was 162 games. It wasn't just at home. And I'm like,
I know, baseball.
Yeah, you know baseball. So he was very interesting. I met another gal that you're like, man, talking about dumping on somebody. She's like, yeah, I'm here. And like 5 minutes in the conversation, she's bawling because, I woke up this morning. My husband says he's divorcing me, and I was still set to go on this trip. And so I just went anyway. And, she became a really good friend. And she introduced me to Chris Harder.
Oh, wow.
At that. And we kind of exchanged stories. And then Chris Harder I was introduced to, and didn't have a lot of conversation with him, but then we connected when I got back and didn't realize, like, his influence in the industry that he was in. Again, all I'd ever known was real estate seminars.
Yeah.
So I really got out of my comfort zone and went, I'm like, I don't know what any of these people do. Like, what does this look like?
Totally.
And so I'd really encourage people, like, no matter what business you're in, go to something else outside your industry. Mm-hmm. Go explore.
Totally.
Be an outsider. I felt like an outsider. Like I said, I knew nobody, knew nothing about it. But the speakers were awesome. Lewis puts on a great conference. I was bummed that, it wasn't available this year, but I met Chris, and then I was actually on Chris's podcast for the Love of Money episode. I think it was 75 that I was on with Chris.
That's cool.
And then that was Chris's first year that he was putting a mastermind together.
That's awesome.
And that's where I was really introduced to the mastermind thing.
Yeah.
And the difference that I found, which I was extremely lucky when I got into Chris's, because it was his first year. He was just starting it. And then I didn't realize how big the mastermind industry was, because they're all different types. And I was so grateful for the mastermind I got into, because it was very intimate. It was very small, but it was also ridiculously impactful from the standpoint of Chris's influences, the people he's connected with, some of the people and stories and dinners that we've had with people are just insane.
That's cool.
And I think the mastermind is important on what they bring.
Right.
What that person brings.
Well, and so earlier you were talking about the research that you could do about whoever you're going to be coaching with. And so amazing to think about Chris's story and anybody who did the research to learn about. And it's exclusive, right? You've gotten to a place where you just can't sign up for his stuff. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Everybody sign up for his, but no, you can't.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it's a very small group. It's extremely expensive. But, so let's go back to the investment piece of it.
Right.
I think
And what an evolution.
Yeah. So I remember freaking out because we were broke when I first signed up for Tom Ferry. And I think the other point to this, too, is that sometimes it's very hard to get your spouse to buy into what you want to invest in, because it is expensive. Tom Ferry, when I first started, I think it was like $1,000 a month. Was it $1,000 a month? Yeah, I think so. That's what it was. That's an expensive car payment.
Totally.
But you have to be willing to, number one, make that commitment, but you also have to be committed to it. That was the first expensive one that I had signed up for.
When you and Kim were working together, was that was more colleague to colleague, friend to friend? That wasn't a paid mentorship, right?
Yep. But that was somebody that I reached out to and said, I need help. Will you?
Yeah.
And again, the relationship was there.
Evolution, right? So from seeking out guidance from somebody you respected that was also a good friend, and then taking that next leap into Tom Ferry, which is very accessible, but still a monetary investment, right? And not a light investment.
Right. And then I coached with John Sheplack for a little while, which was good, very expensive. Again, I mean, he's phenomenal in the industry from the sales side. I've coached a couple of times with Brian North, although I bought his coaching as a charity thing, but, he's great. It's not a big paid thing out there. But then the mastermind thing, what led me to the mastermind was just something different and outside the box. And so I wanted to go be a part of something that was outside my industry.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what everybody else was doing in the influencer space and the online space and the techniques, and figure out how I could bring that back into my business.
Totally. I think that's so huge, right? Because so many times I think we can get stuck in our niches and think, well, why do I want to hear what so-and-so has to say? Because it has nothing to do with my industry. And at the end of the day, a business person is a business person. There's so many like tactics and strategies and ideas that you can take away and apply to your own business or apply to whatever it is that you're working on. And you can learn so much more. And I think some of the best things that we've seen in real estate might have been born out of people talking to somebody in a completely different industry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's so cool. What do you think? So I love this like little, because we never had this conversation before, just this evolution of all the different types of coaching that you've had. But like how, like what do you think, like if you were to have a singular takeaway from each one that kind of took you to the next one, is that even possible to think about like one thing or the worth factor, right? Like because do you still coach with Tom Ferry?
No.
But at that point you probably transitioned to something else, right?
Actually at that time I didn't. I still engaged in some of that different stuff. There's a time in my life back then I wished I could have. I couldn't financially afford it. When I first did it, it was great, and I think I even had to cancel in the middle of it because I couldn't afford it. It was back in 2008 when, shit was just crazy. But I wish there was a progressive at the time. And so now you progress and find, and there's all kinds of coaches. That's the cool thing.
Yeah.
You can spend as little as $100 a month to, and some of it's virtual, some of it's group. But I think it's a good thing to have in your life. And again, the question is, do you want a mentor or a coach? Coach is really there to move you.
What do you think about this? Like in our space, let's say somebody that's earlier into their career in real estate, do you think it's a good idea for them to seek out their lenders or their title partners to be like, hey, how do we put together a group of people, like-minded people that we can, brain trust with? Like, who can you reach out to in our business if you're, a younger agent, not younger in age, but younger in years in the business, to put groups together?
I think that, when we did it in 2008, there was 6 or 8 guys. It was Travis Mass and Dave Carrick and Ryan Banavec and Brandon Hare. And we literally, when the market went sideways, we just decided on Thursday mornings we were going to have coffee at the Coffee Bean. And we were just going to talk about the market and share what was working. How can we help? What does it look like? And you can absolutely do that and create that group or that tribe of like-minded people.
Yeah.
And those created some incredible lifelong friendships and relationships and industry partners. And I think that anybody has the ability to do that. And I think there's a lot of it going on out there. And I think that if you put yourself out, so many people, in our industry especially, the industry has changed so much from when I first started in it. Because when I first started in it, it was a non-sharing industry. Everybody was closed off, like they had the secret sauce.
Like if I would meet with people, they'd be like, "Don't tell anybody I'm doing this," and I never had the heart to tell them. I'm like, "There's like 17 million people doing this."
Right. I think that a younger group of guys could get together and they could talk about things like, "Hey, what's going on with kids? Like, how are you controlling your schedule?" And I think they could help each other in that way without spending money. If you don't have any money to spend on it, then you know what? Get a group of guys together. Here's the one thing I would encourage, though. don't make it over cocktails. Make it over coffee.
Yeah.
Things just don't.
It's a completely different dynamic.
It's completely different dynamics.
That's really good advice.
I think
Is
it's
that
important.
From experience, or did you already know that going in?
No, totally from experience. Because when I think about now, I would rather, being alcohol free for almost 8 months now,
which is so awesome.
I have some deep regrets from my mastermind of some of the people that I met, like billionaire type people and I remember writing in my journal, like, this is one of my biggest regrets in Mastermind was I wrote the next morning that I wished I could remember what this guy said to me, because I had undivided attention from a billionaire sitting at that table, but I was too many cocktails deep to really take in what was happening. And I think when we go to happy hour, and if it's really going to be something where you're trying to connect, you keep the sauce out of it.
Yeah.
So that you can truly have a connecting conversation and it be meaningful. If you want to go to happy hour, go for fun.
Right.
Don't go to try to connect.
Yeah.
So sorry, squirrel.
I don't think that's a squirrel at all. I think that's so on point. I think that's a huge, I think that's a really good piece of advice. Like, supper club and cocktails may not be the best place to connect when it comes to sharing ideas. It might be the best place to connect for building rapport or getting to know people or having fun.
Right.
But it's probably not going to be the best place for some retention.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important.
That's a huge takeaway for you, though, to kind of have that moment of like, to remember that. Like, wow,
the scary thing is I still remember sitting on the patio in LA and writing that and being like almost shaming myself for what I had done.
Yeah. That's so huge, though, because think about the effort of getting coaching or being in a mastermind, right? So from your experience, being able to say, wow, I can look back and realize that there's some opportunities I've had to connect with great people that I missed, because it was happy hour, or because there was alcohol, or because I wasn't prepared, or there's a long grocery list of things that we should think about, before we take that meeting or before we show up for that meeting, or, that's huge, though, that one for sure. That's a cool share.
Yeah, I think that's an all-in thing. And again, it goes back to, the encouragement that if you do pay for coaching, or you pay for, let's be really honest about real estate conventions. It's a great time to leave town, pretend you're listening to somebody, and get hammered at night.
I'm not licensed, so I don't know.
You took me to speak at several places, and your industry is just as bad. What do you, when you go and you're investing in money, are you truly investing in that? And if you are you willing to take a step back and really?
Right. I mean, I'm a big believer of coaching. I think it's super important. And I think for me, I wish that the investment that I make now and probably in the last 10 years, I would have made a lot sooner.
Sure.
Because it's everything that you've just shared is do I really want to spend the money? Am I going to really get anything out of it? Like, all these elements of, what if, and the cost, and can I afford it? And, but you actually can't afford not to.
Right. It's like paying for a car that you don't drive.
Right.
And, I would also encourage, if you do have a coach or a mentor, don't show up to the call like when you're in between appointments.
Yep.
It should be,
I agree with that.
Hey, 15, 20 minutes before and 15, 20 minutes after, it's like a designated so that you can think about what you're going to talk about. And then afterwards, what actions are you putting in place when you're done?
Yep.
Too many people, myself included, have paid for things that you do while you're busy rather than it being an intentional appointment.
My coaching is at the end of the day or I can't do it. Because even if I do it early in the day, there's too many things I have going on that.
So talk to me about your coach. I mean, you've mentioned a couple of times when we're hiking, and I think your coach is more of a mentor.
Yeah, he's definitely more of a mentor, but he's super strategic at the same time. And, I always say about Al, like, he holds up a mirror and he brings Pandora's box. And it just, there are things that come up, right? So, I mean, I won't get, like, too detailed, but, a lot of times the things that I'll tell him that I want, he will tell me what I need to do that I would have never thought of. And I'm not even being exaggerative. I mean, there are some things that he's told me that I need to work on in my personal life And that's not even one of my queries. I mean, I'm coming to him going, hey, here's the things that I needed to do in my business. And he'd be like, well, you need to start over here first. And I'll be like, I'm like, I can't do this right now. Like, but I'm super grateful because there's, I think a good coach has this sixth sense of sorts, has an intuition of sorts, and has met with enough people to kind of come up with different ways of like helping you see things. And should have this great combination of kind of really getting who you are, but the fine line of pushing you at the same time.
Right.
So if you have a coach that completely turns you off because you guys do not have any of the kind of rapport, you can't meet someplace close, it's a very challenging, unenjoyable. But a really great coach should still push you to where there are moments that aren't super enjoyable. Like, to have a session with my coach and tell me, like, if this is what you want this year, he's like, you're looking in the wrong place. It needs to start over here. And I'm like, that makes me really uncomfortable. But I'm so grateful for him for the insight, right? I mean, I've had the opportunity of knowing him for the better part of 10 years, and he's definitely a mentor. He could be super strategic, but he looks under the hood in all the different categories. And whenever people have asked me, about him, and I have another coach too that's very much more business driven. But whenever people, I don't know, now I talk to people and I get this sense of like, you should talk to Al. You should talk to Al.
Right.
And they'll be like, well, what's he going to do for me? I'm like, I don't know. You need to talk to Al. But I think for me, the coaching element has been such a strong force in the decisions that I've made, the choices that I've made, career-wise, how it's affected my family relationships, like all kinds of different nuances that for me personally, I'm a much happier person.
Sure.
I'm a much, much happier person. It doesn't mean it's not without its like pain, struggle, frustrations or things that you're always working on. And I think that's the other thing about coaching or mentoring. You're still always working. It's so much more work. It's a lot more work. Yeah. But it creates a different framework that I can connect with. As opposed to just being like, I have a lot of work to do and I don't know what to do. Right. I have a lot of work to do and I kind of have a framework, So,
and I think from the student, I think it's really important that they have to take responsibility for the actions and the insights that were given.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, you can't blame it on the coach. Well, this person didn't do anything. Right. Well, you didn't do the actions. Exactly. The coach, the mentor, their job is to get you to think outside the box.
Totally.
Right? That's a lot of when I'm mentoring my agents that work for me or doing my coaching. Yeah. It's you have to think outside the box. If you're not willing to take these actions, yep. People ask me all the time, well, how did you create the lending sources that you have? And I explained to them, hey, there's 5 people in your sphere that have money that would be willing to lend it to you if you have this conversation.
Totally.
Do you know how many people do that?
Nobody.
Zilch.
Yeah.
Zilch.
Yeah.
Because either they're scared of it, they don't know how to have the conversation, even though we've had it. But, sometimes when I was coaching, I felt like I was failing because I was trying to take responsibility for their success. And the reality is not my responsibility.
Right.
It's yours.
That's the most difficult piece, I think, is that when you're trying to help people, and you see it for them, but you can't. You have to almost like kind of create a little bit of a, barrier. Like I can deliver the steps, and if you take them, great, and if you don't, you won't, and you won't experience the things that you're trying to accomplish. Whereas you do. The coolest thing is this: when you do take the steps, you will achieve more than what you're intending to achieve. It's amazing when you have reflection about the coaching and little triumphs along the way, because sometimes it's not 100% gain, right?
Right.
If you get some coaching notes to do X, Y, and Z, and you do X and Y, you're still going to get further ahead. And it's kind of cool to be reflective on, oh my goodness, look at all these other things I've experienced because of coaching. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite books is The Alchemist. It's one of my all-time favorite books. I've read it multiple times. And it is so much about coaching, because coaching is the journey. And a lot of times the destination you get to shifts and molds and changes because of the coaching.
Right.
Right. So I think that it's, I just don't know how, it would be a very, I guess it would be, I don't know what the right word is, but it wouldn't be as fun of a journey without having some coaches.
Well, yeah, agreed. But I also think it wouldn't be as great of a journey if you weren't flexible in moving from, like if you look at my path, it's gone from real estate coaching into some life coaches into some business coaches and then into some different masterminds. And the masterminds, if we kind of go back to that, there's a lot of different masterminds. And again, it depends on what you need and what you're looking for.
Right.
There's investor masterminds. I've never joined one. There's, I think when you join the investor mastermind, you're looking to either increase your business or increase your connections. And I think that's what the great thing is about masterminds. You're looking, it's not just what the moderator brings, it's also the connections that they bring with it and who are they putting in the room.
Yeah.
Because if they're just letting any Tom, Dick, or Harry join the room, you're not getting great connections. So when, Chris Harder is a mentor and a coach and a personal friend of mine, in his mastermind, the application is it's very harsh. It's very like, I'm only going to put these people in the room. So when he's looking at filling that room, he wants to make sure that it has that energy and that synergy, because if it doesn't, you can have one bad person screw it all up, which makes it miserable for everybody else.
I give him props, right? Because there's a lot of people in those scenarios that are collecting payments for the coaching, and they just care about collecting the payment. He's going so above and beyond to make sure that I'm going to make sure you get more than your money's worth, right? So I think there's a lot of integrity in that for sure.
Yeah, because I've seen some of the masterminds where people have paid to big money to be in the room with super celebrities, and those super celebrities are nowhere to be found. They're not really part of it. They were a name. It's like the actor or actress that they don't come with a bottle of soap. Wait, I bought this bottle of soap. Where is that person? Okay, bad analogy.
Like the bottle of soap.
Awesome. But I've heard it. But it's also, you have to realize that maybe you're paying to be in a room with the people that they brought to the room, which is important. A lot of good connections. But me personally, like with Chris's mastermind, I've been in it this will be year 4. Part of the reason is that I can text and have a conversation with Chris anytime I need something, if it's important.
Yeah.
I also have my one-on-one calls with him. A lot of people that run masterminds, they're almost off limits except for the times that they're together.
Session, yeah.
Right, they're in session.
Yeah.
So I do think that you ask those questions. What is it? How intimate? How big is it? Some people I've heard complain like, hey, this mastermind is 100 people. Probably not. That 100-person mastermind, it's really not a mastermind. It's really a group of people getting together to discuss real estate or business or whatnot.
I mean, it kind of goes back to originally us. Like, it's so overused, right? The term mastermind is so overused. Just like, what's my other favorite? Disruption. I can't stand that word either.
So,
but
it just kind of remind me, when you're looking for, if you truly want to look at a mastermind is probably 20 people or less. It's a very intimate group. It's probably going to be very expensive if it's that intimate. But you have to be willing to invest. But that investment, you have to look for, what are you getting out of it?
Yeah.
And you have to get out of it.
Well, I also think, I love the term, it's giver's gain, right? So even if you're in a paid mastermind or you create a group of folks that you can have a brain trust with, giver's gain, right? So you should come prepared to give just as much as you're prepared to learn and take away and glean from others. And I think to me, that's truly the best example of what you want from a mastermind, is coming in to give and share. And maybe people do or don't want what I have, and at the same time, I'm going to learn as much as I can from the folks in the room.
Yep.
But be selective, do your homework, be committed, right? And show up.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you think? Here we are. I mean, you've seen the real estate space change a lot in the last couple decades or more. I mean, you've had the career of an 85-year-old, even though you're only, but
shut up, Bernie.
What do you think is kind of the next iteration of coaching/mastermind moving forward, or what you think we might see?
I think if I'm in the real estate space, in fact, if I'm in any space, I'm looking for a mastermind or a group that I can get information from different industries that potentially could impact or influence or, encourage me to get outside the box in what I'm doing. That was the one thing I went with the intent. When I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I want to do this. At the time it was a low 5-figure. Now it's a high 5-figure investment. I mean, this year I'll be close to 6 figures investing into coaches and masterminds of what I do. But my masterminds, like I said, they're very intimate. They're big players in the room. I'm partly there because of the connection. And I think that both of the masterminds that I'm involved in are a lot of different walks of life. And a lot of different people have done different things, which I get to learn from all those, and I get to bring it back into my business, which is what's changing my business. The other thing, too, that's really important to me is that I get to bring that stuff in, and then I get to go put it out into my own business,
right?
Into, Kyle and Eden, into Nicole, into Erica, and I get to bring that
You're
back.
Like sprinkling it everywhere.
Right, I get to sprinkle that, but I think that that's important, too. If you asked anybody that works for me, is it important to know that the owner or your boss or the person you're working for, what they're invested in, because obviously it's being brought back to you.
Yeah.
It's great
sure.
that they don't have to spend that money, but they know that they're seeing it coming back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that nobody wants a secret agent boss, right? Like, and whether it's like overtly or covertly, I mean, you're influencing based on the coaching and the mentoring that you've experienced.
Right.
Yeah. And that makes you,
and I think,
makes you who you are.
Let's just kind of break it down, I think everybody should have some sort of level of coach or accountability or mentor. In real estate, here's the funny thing. You can be coached or mentored for free 100%. When you start in the business. Yeah. You can go to a team that has a mentor program that a piece of the deals that you're being trained to do is being paid for that mentorship. You don't have to put the money out front. You have to put the work in up front. So there is a free piece of that. You also, for mentorship and coaching, I think you have to be willing to put in the time for that. Like when I go back to how I learned with my dad, I worked for less money so that I could be coached and mentored by a genius in the business. You want to be coached. You want to do what some of these big people do. Be willing to go work for less or go do something for free for somebody. You want to be around it?
Yeah.
Go be somebody's bitch. Sorry. That's the truth. Are you willing to play in that space and give up your time to go learn from somebody that is incredible in the business?
Yeah, for sure.
Are you willing to do that?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a look. We have time and money, and if you don't have any money, you probably have time. And if you have time to invest and give that to somebody else to help them with something, then they're going to invest in you as well because you're willing to. I think about people that have come to work for me. They've wanted it, but they weren't willing to put forth the effort.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the frustration is when you start to become when you're mentoring others or coaching others, and you're putting more into it than I can't care more about your success than you do,
Right.
What do you think in terms of in real estate space? Like, what are like the milestones for an agent when they should really start thinking about, investing in coaching? At what point in your career? Is it a volume? Is it a number of years? Is it
I think when you're ready, it's kind of, it's no different than buying real estate. It's when you are, when you feel you need it or you want to go to the next level, like maybe you're stuck. I think that early on, I think you start off with a mentor that's training you how to do the business and you're willing to give up part of your commissions for that mentoring.
Yeah.
And then when you move on and you're on your own, or even if you're on, you have you're an agent underneath the team, guess what? Just because you have that doesn't mean you shouldn't be investing in yourself.
Right.
When it comes down to those pieces. So, you start learning, which is going to level up your business and your productivity. And you start thinking about, what am I willing? So again, we go back to early on. what are you willing to invest this year? Right? So, hey, I'm willing to invest $10,000 in coaching, mastermind, something this year. What's going to work best for you?
Well, I mean, that's great, but like, somebody may not have $10,000 this year.
That means you have time.
That's right. Yeah, that equation, the time
equation. That means you have time.
So I think it's interesting because we're talking about coaching and masterminding as being, outside the box, and but it's not for us, right? It's because we feel like it's like part of, what we need to be successful. And a lot of people don't, though. So I feel like it's important to kind of tie the two together in terms of like why this is outside the box, because so many people think that it's so far out of their reach to have coaching, mentorship, and masterminds, and it's not. It can be. You can create it. You can, just decide that you want that engagement.
Yeah. Sorry, I just kind of thinking about it. Where do you start? I think somebody would need to take stock or take inventory of life right now. Some people, their business might be doing okay, but guess what? I bet you their business would go through the roof if their health was in better shape. Maybe they need to start with a health coach and get some weight down and get this piece in line with their life, and this business would take off over here. It's not that they're missing anything over here. It's this piece that's holding them back. And I think they need to take inventory into what is holding me back.
Yeah.
Is it my health? Is it my energy? Where do I go here?
Right.
Because you have that commitment, that time. And maybe if you have that under control and things aren't great at home, maybe you need to go see a therapist first before you get a coach and get some of that stuff worked out, and maybe if it's business, you start where, what is it? Is it, hey, I need coaching in how to make better sales calls. Figure out in your business where your weaknesses are, and maybe you need to be coached on that.
Yeah.
Maybe you're running a business and maybe you need coaching on, like, when you think about the book Traction, they have coaches for traction on how to get your business to the next level. You have good things, but you need better systems.
Yeah.
There's so much of it, and that's why I said everybody's going to be different and everybody needs to figure it out. And sometimes it's not coaching, and sometimes it's different classes or courses that you need to add to your business. But I think your coach can help you determine what's going to be a squirrel and what's not.
Yeah.
Because real estate's full of squirrels.
Totally.
I mean, God, look at Facebook. You could like go through like all the flipping courses and investment courses and
say weapons of mass distraction in real estate, right? The shiny objects, and everybody's just trying to. And I mean, I think there's a lot of rabbit holes where people end up being disappointed with some of the things that they have the right intention, they just did not connect to the right.
Coaching can be just as much of a mass distraction as well. So I think your coach, your mentor, or mastermind, whatever you choose to do, needs to align with not only your right now goals, but kind of your life goals. Mm-hmm. Because if that coach or mentor doesn't line up with where you're going and what you want to do or who you want to be,
right, then
it's probably not a good fit, and it's probably not a good fit. So you need to look at those stepping stones of what you truly need in life.
Yeah, intention, right? So think about what your intention is in terms of having a coach or mentor or joining a mastermind.
Right, and the bigger investment, the more you have to be invested in it time-wise, because some of these coaches are demanding and expensive.
Yeah. Top, like, 3 things that you think are the most important and have been the most important for you. Just full of great questions today.
So
I'm just being funny, but
the biggest thing that I've ever gotten was get out of my space. Like, that's the number one takeaway.
Get out of the industry.
Get out of the industry.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
huge.
Go find somebody that's not a real estate coach. I don't find somebody that's not a real estate coach when you're trying to figure out your business and where you're going, because they're going to be able to add different facets to it and help you think about things. That was the greatest thing I ever did. I went to an industry conference or a conference that was outside my industry to see what I could bring back into my own business. Cool. That was awesome.
That's huge.
I think as you're starting, it's not a money thing. Guess what? You can create an accountability group on your own.
Yes.
You can call 4 guys and go, hey, or 4 gals or whatever it is and go, I want to be accountable. Are you willing to do this with me? This is what I'm looking for.
So time.
So it's time.
Yeah.
You know, do it over coffee.
Do it over coffee.
Do it over coffee. Do it over lunch. You know, I think it's, and you made a comment about the giver. So I always look at my team as my giving is the mentorship when it comes down to the agents that are here. And I love giving, and I love the conversations, and I love teaching that stuff. And I think that, you know, you can give time and get something out of it by creating that little container.
Totally. I love that. Yeah.
So did I answer all the questions?
You did. So get outside the industry. It's money or time. So if you don't have money, you've got time. Corral some people together.
I think the last thing is do your research.
Yes.
Ask for referrals. Hey, if you're thinking about a coach, reach out to somebody that's been coached.
Yeah.
And say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Any recommendations?
Totally.
Put it out on Facebook and say, you know, hey, who's the coach is what it is. Because there's a difference in, as well, there's a difference in coaching and mentoring and courses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I look at, you know, what I do, I'm a coach in a different type of space in the industry. If you're wanting to go down the investment rabbit hole, there's different things, and I'm more mentoring in that space than I am coaching.
I think too, if you're having the right conversation, if you say, I'm looking for a coach, don't get frustrated that people ask you more questions.
Right.
Because if you're endeavoring for the first time, anybody who's really listening is going to ask you way more questions before they answer and say, oh, call this person, right?
Right.
Because I think that's really has to start. Is you said it early at the very beginning of this, is that know what you need or what you want out of it.
Yep.
And that's hard sometimes, but people are going to ask you questions to help connect you with the right people.